Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony, the Creepy Bard, coming to you from Rehavia Park in New Jerusalem, just to the west of the Old City. And behind me, you'll see the Monastery of the Cross. Isn't that lovely? Now, that monastery, according to tradition, was first established in the 4th century by Helena, the mother of the Emperor Constantine. But that current structure right there is not a structure from the 4th century. No. That is a structure that was built in the 11th century and then later restored by Crusaders, and it's gone over a number of restorations and a number of renovations over the years. According to the tradition, that monastery was built in the place where Adam's head was buried. Yes, we're talking Adam, the first man, Adam, the whole rib thing, and yes, but not the rib, just the head is what's buried there. And according to the legend, a tree grew up from the place where Adam's head was buried, and that tree provided the wood for the cross upon which Jesus was crucified. It's a lovely building over there, and this in general is just a lovely park. I'm on my way to the Israel Museum right now, where I'm going to see quite a number of other artifacts. Now, right ahead of me, there's another little weird thing I found. There's no sign there to let me know what it is. There's nothing there to, I just have to guess. I do a lot of guessing while I'm on this trip. But I think that it's just a small little random ruin in the middle of the park, which is what you get. Side note, lovely little bit of modern art. This thing was put in the 1970s. Not really sure what it's supposed to represent. I mean, it's called The Struggle. That's the title of the piece. But I'm not an expert on modern art, so I'm not really able to give you much of an insight as to what the heck that's supposed to be. Hello there.
Hello.
Random people on the street. It's fantastic. And up here, ahead of me, is this random, what I think is a ruin. It might be an actual ruin, or it might be something they put together from ruined stones. I mean, these stones are almost certainly ancient stones, but whether this is an ancient structure or a modern structure built from ancient stones, I'm not sure. But either way, it's pretty neat. There's a millstone over here, and graffiti, because it is a modern city, and in modern cities you get graffiti, even if it's a modern, ancient city. Right, I'll be seeing you soon. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony, the Creepy Bard, coming to you from the Israel Museum, where they have a 1:50 scale model of the city of Jerusalem as it was during the Second Temple era. This model was built in 1965, but it's gone through a number of changes since then, because every time they have a new archaeological discovery, they change it in order to fix it so that it'll reflect what it actually was. Right behind me, that's the Roman fortress. That's how the Romans controlled the city, was from that fortress right in the centre. As we go along here, there's the Pool of Bethesda, which is mentioned in the New Testament. You may have heard of that. This little tower over here is a tomb of Alexander Yanai, right in the middle of the rich part of town. You can see all these big houses with plenty of room in between them, lovely courtyards. They've each all got their own little private wells. So yeah, rich part of town, good for them. I'll tell you a little bit about that tomb, Alexander Yanai. He was one of the last Hasmonean kings of Israel, but he wasn't very much liked by the Sanhedrin, by the High Court. He dissolved the Sanhedrin a few times. He also had himself appointed the High Priest in addition to being the king, which is a big no-no as far as the Sanhedrin was concerned. But the people loved him. The people loved him because he kept on winning wars and gaining new territory for the people of Israel. Lovely little house right there. That and his wife was Alexandra Shlomit. Alexandra Shlomit was not only loved by the people, she was also loved by the Sanhedrin because she was the sister of the head of the Sanhedrin. And during Alexander's lifetime, he made a vow, a promise, that when he died, his sons would not inherit the kingdom, but rather his wife would inherit the kingdom. And so the Sanhedrin just sort of tolerated him because they figured, as soon as he's dead, his wife will be in charge, and we can live with that. Now you'll notice from over here, there's a second set of walls, an inner wall and an outer wall. That is because this way is north. That's the northern end of the city. Southern end of the city, you gotta climb uphill in order to get into the city, but the northern end of the city is a nice easy slope, so you gotta have extra walls there in order to be able to defend the city. Over here, we've got the Herodian Palace. This is a palace that King Herod built for himself. Isn't that gorgeous? Isn't that pretty? The man loved his prettiness, didn't he? As we come around the other side, coming around to the southern side of the city from the Second Temple era, we get into the Gay Ben Hinnom, the valley of the son of Hinnom. That's where you get the Hebrew word Gehenna, which is sort of the Jewish equivalent of hell, kind of. But reason why the Gay Ben Hinnom is also the term for hell is because that's where they dump the garbage, and you'd burn the garbage. So it's all smelly and burny and fiery, and that's sort of what they thought hell must have been like. Over there, up on that hill, you've got the theatre, and just below that, that's the poor part of town. This is where all the poor people lived. Also, up there, that big thing there, that is the Temple Mount. Over there, that's the Western Wall, but not the entire thing. That's not what we saw when we actually saw the Western Wall. Rather, the part that we saw, the part that is visible today, is just the tiniest little part on the far left of that wall. And there you see that arch coming off the side there. That's Robinson's Arch that I showed you before. So here we've got Ir David. This is the oldest part of the city that goes back at least 3,500 years. And these buildings over here in Ir David, those are the old Hasmonean palaces. Now, Herod didn't use the old Hasmonean palaces because he's Herod. And he wanted something bigger and something prettier because he's Herod. And so that wasn't good enough for him. He instead had a bunch of palaces made for himself further up the city. And as we finally come around back to where we came from, we have the temple itself. The Beit HaMikdash, the temple in Jerusalem. The Talmud says that anybody who has not seen King Herod's temple has not seen a beautiful building. And that is gorgeous. In the front there, you've got the largest courtyard out here. That is the courtyard of the Gentiles. All the non-Jews were allowed to go there. Jews were allowed in the inner courtyard. You've got the front courtyard, which is the Ezras Noshim, the court of the women, where women were allowed, and further in you've got the court of the Israelites, where Jews were allowed, and then further in you've got the court of the priests and the Levites, where only priests and Levites were allowed. That's the basilica over there. That was built by the Romans, or more specifically by Herod, but Herod under the Romans, and that is the holiest place in the world. I'll be showing you more of the museum when we get inside. See you soon. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and here we have the lintel of the synagogue at Chorazin. Remember that synagogue that I showed you in that other video? You'll see it if you haven't seen it yet. So yeah, that's the lintel. A lot of the stuff that's at the actual site is reproductions because it's in the middle of nowhere and they don't want it to get destroyed. But here they can keep it under control and make sure that it doesn't have any more damage. And that's not it. They've got that lintel. You've also got this lintel over here from further inside the synagogue. You got another little frieze over here with an image of the ark over the top of it right there. Isn't that lovely? And over behind me, this conch over here, that is over the top of the ark itself. And we got another one here that also goes over the ark. Isn't that lovely? I like it. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. And over here we've got another synagogue floor with that motif that we have seen already a number of times of two menorahs on either side of the Holy Ark, which is also a representation of the temple in Jerusalem. And this is from Beit Shan, which is to the east of Beit Alpha, the other one that we saw earlier. Over there is a synagogue menorah from the synagogue in Hamat Tiberia that we saw earlier. And over here, this is what I particularly want to show you. This is the Holy Ark from the synagogue in Chorazin that we saw earlier. And behind it right there, which I'm going to show you a better look at it in just a moment, is the seat of Moses, the one that we saw in Chorazin, the one which the version that I showed you before was a reproduction, but this is it. This is the original. This is the seat of Moses that the rabbi would sit in and various dignitaries would also sit in. Glad I got to show you that. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. And here we have some lovely examples of sarcophagi that were found in Israel. These are all Canaanite. Now I know that they look Egyptian, but they are indeed Canaanite. They come to us from the 13th century. And the reason that they look Egyptian is because there was a lot of trade going on between the Egyptians and the Canaanites during the 13th century. And so there's a lot of Egyptian influence in their artwork. And I personally think that these are lovely. This is an interesting part of history right here, because you can see the connections between various people, regardless of cultural differences, regardless of geographical differences. You get various art connections and various influences across borders and across lines, primarily because of trade. Money can fix things. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. And here we've got some artifacts from the Canaanite period. So these are from about 6,000 years ago or so. Now these are ossuaries. Now in the earlier periods, before about 6,000 years ago or so, if you were Canaanite and you died, you would be taken down to a cave and your body would be placed onto a table and it would be left there for about a year or two, and your flesh would rot away and all would be left would be the bones, and then the bones would be put into a communal bone pit. And this is where the biblical phrase comes from, and he lay with his ancestors. In the Bible, when somebody dies, it says, and he lay with his ancestors. That's what it's referring to, because your bones would just be put into the pit with all of the rest of the bones. But it didn't stay that way forever. Eventually, the Canaanites started making ossuaries. We've got some more of them over here. And basically what the ossuaries is a bone box. After the flesh rotted away from the bones would be placed into these bone boxes. So you can see they're basically just big enough to accommodate a femur, which is the longest bone in the human body, and then the rest would be able to fit in rather easily. It's gruesome. I like it. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard, and we have some more ossuaries here, but these ones come from the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD. Now the Canaanites used ossuaries, but that was about 6,000 years ago, and after that the ossuaries were no longer very popular. People just started getting buried like normal people. But by the 1st century BC and 1st century AD, the ossuaries were back in style and people were using them again, and on some of these you can see inscribed the name right there of the person who is buried in there. This is someone son of Yosef. It's kind of hard to read because it's old script and it's also kind of worn off a little bit. And the other thing I want to show you here is this heel bone with a nail through it, and just in case you weren't certain, yeah, this poor fella got crucified. Now this is a copy, the real one is down in the basement in a storage box somewhere. But yeah, crucifixion was a thing. They nailed people to pieces of wood. God love the Bible. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard coming to you from the Israel Museum here in Jerusalem, and here they have an exhibit where they have an Egyptian mummy from the Ptolemaic period, probably the mummy of a priest. Behind me, that is not the priest, obviously, that is a mummified ibis. The ibis was sacred to the Egyptians, and so they would often mummify sacred animals and bury them along with the pharaoh or priest or whoever was buried, whoever's got mummified. Over here we have some lovely paintings that would be placed on top of the mummy. These are from the Ptolemaic period, and so you can see the Greek influence. Again, Ptolemaic period, we're looking at 3rd century to 1st century BCE. So you can see these are Egyptian, but you can see the Greek influence, and these paintings would be placed on top of the mummy, whereas in earlier Egyptian mummies you'd have masks, much like this one. Well, actually not like this one. This is also from the Ptolemaic period, so you can see the Greek influence, but it is a mask rather than a painting. There's another one right there. Now, behind me over here, you can see the actual sarcophagus of the priest who is kept here, and there's that sarcophagus. Now, even though this is from the Ptolemaic period, this priest has apparently opted to go with a more Egyptian-style sarcophagus rather than a Greek-style sarcophagus. Behind me, you got the canopic jars. When a person was mummified, his organs would be removed from the body and preserved separately and then placed in these jars over here. Over here, you got the scarab beetles, and these scarab beetles would be placed in place of the heart. In the earliest mummies, the heart would be preserved and then left in the body, but in the later mummies, they just took the heart out and put the scarab in its place. Over here, you got various figurines and various other things that would be buried with the pharaoh or the priest or whoever was being mummified in order to help them on their way to the afterlife. And over here we have the mummy itself. This mummy is one of a Ptolemaic priest, so we're talking somewhere around between the 4th and the 1st century BCE. And again, he has opted to go with a much more Egyptian style mummification rather than one of Greek influence. See you again soon. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony coming from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and here they've got a number of examples of ancient glass, and these are just gorgeous and beautiful. Glass is one of those things that preserves well, but doesn't preserve well. It doesn't preserve well because it's brittle, and so it's very likely to break, and then it goes smash, and then there's nothing left to it. But it does preserve well in the sense that it does not corrode the way metal does, and it doesn't wear out the way that stone does. And so if it doesn't get smashed, if nobody comes along and breaks it, then it will just sort of last forever. I mean, look at this stuff, it's gorgeous. I mean, look at this bowl over here, that bowl right there. That could be brand new. You could buy that at a Walmart, but it's not brand new. It's from the 2nd century. Fantastic. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and right now I'm looking at a room of Islamic art, and they've got some lovely pipes right here from the 19th century from Iran, along with a hookah, as well as a painting of a couple of gents just sitting around the hookah, having a smoke, having a time. I really need to do that at some point soon. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony the Creepy Bard coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and over here we've got a lovely Jewish wedding dress from Bosnia from the 19th century. Isn't that pretty, all that red? And over here we've got another wedding dress, Jewish wedding dress, this one from Morocco, also from the 19th century. Isn't that beautiful? And you'll notice that neither one of them are white, because white wedding dresses are a symbol of British imperialism. See you soon. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony, the Creepy Bard, coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and behind me we have the famous Bird's Head Haggadah. I don't know how well you can see it, but I'm going to try and get you as good of a look as possible. It's opened up to the page of Dayenu, and you'll see that the people there, they're all wearing the Jew hat. Back in the Middle Ages, Jews were required to wear special hats by the non-Jewish government, and you'll notice that they all have birds' heads. This is because in Jewish custom there are a number of rabbis who say that you're not allowed to make depictions of human beings because man is created in the image of God, and you're not allowed to make an image of God, and so therefore, instead of having an image of a person, you have a bird's head. It works. See you soon. Good day to you lovely people, it's David Anthony, the Creepy Bard, coming to you from the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and here we have a mosaic which comes from a synagogue in Gaza from the 6th century AD, and there it is, King David with his harp, and here we have David with his harp. I don't know why they let me bring this thing in here.